How y'all doing? God bless y'all. What if I told you Exodus chapters 35 through 37 isn't just about building a tabernacle? It's about teaching rebellious people how to obey again. Remember, after in chapter 32, after they built the golden calf, the attitude of the people starts changing. Before, they acted impulsively and followed their own desires. They used their gold to build an idol. But in chapter 35, they began giving willingly for the work of God that he actually commanded of them. And in chapter 32, they used their resources to build an idol. In chapter 35, those same resources were surrendered for God's instructions instead of their own desires. And if you pay attention throughout the scripture, one thing that keeps repeating throughout these chapters is, as the Lord commanded Moses. That repetition matters because God was teaching them that his presence was not to be approached however they wanted to. There was structure, orderance, reverence, and obedience connected to everything they were doing. And honestly, y'all, that still applies today. It's similar to somebody in a marriage or wanting a healthy marriage, should I say, while refusing communication, accountability, forgiveness, faithfulness, or commitment. People often want healthy outcomes while ignoring the obedience, discipline, and commitment connected to them. But these chapters, they show that God cared more about the finished, cared not. He didn't care more about the finished tabernacle, y'all. He cared about whether the people were willing to obey him while building it. One thing that some may overlook is before chapter 35 starts, it talks about rest before work. Before talking about construction, God reminds them about the Sabbath day. And in Exodus chapter 35 too, it says, six days shall work be done, but on the seventh day there shall be to you a holy day, a Sabbath rest, a Sabbath of rest to the Lord. I try to remember the verses, but if I mess up those, I try to reference those, but that's in chapter 35, verse 2. That's important too because sometimes many of us, we can get so busy doing things for God that we actually stop spending actual time with him. And by that, I mean, people, they can get caught up in serving, helping others, posting scripture, working in ministry, or staying active in church while neglecting prayer, obedience, rest, and a personal relationship with God. Service, it shouldn't place relationship, y'all. And another thing these chapters, they show is that everybody had different roles, just like today. Back then, some people, they worked with silver, gold, wood, and fabrics, and some built the structures. Some brought offerings. The women, they spun cloth and materials, and others used specific skills in craftsmanship. Scripture repeatedly said that the people gave willingly. God was using them spiritually and practically at the same time. Their skills became part of their worship. And that matters because not everybody serves God the same way, y'all. And that still applies today. One person may preach publicly while another quietly helps behind the scenes. One may teach while another one encourages, and one may lead while someone else may support. Not every role is visible, but every role still mattered. And a lot of people may look quiet obedience because it doesn't receive public attention, but God still sees it. And that's the only one that matters. That's the only person that matters. These chapters, they also mention the apothecary. And an apothecary was someone who was skilled in preparing oil, incense, perfumes, and ointments. Exodus 37 verse 29 mentions the art of the apothecary, y'all. Their work required precision and wisdom. Even that shows that God can use practical talents and abilities for his purpose. And honestly, another one that I believe may be overlooked is the outside of the tabernacle. It looked far less impressive than what was in the inside of it. And another detail of that, it appears in chapter 36. The outside of the tabernacle was so much more plain, y'all, compared to the inside. The inside was gold, beauty, craftsmanship, light, and detailed work. The outside mainly served as protection. Spiritually, that's important because the outward appearances don't always reveal what is happening internally. People, they often judge off appearance, status, money, followers, or visibility, but God sees deeper than what's external. Another important detail was that the tabernacle was portable, y'all. God's presence moved with his people through the wilderness. Even in certain seasons or uncertain seasons, God was still guiding them. And the tabernacle, it was called the tent of meeting, representing God dwelling among his people and restoring relationships after rebellion. The thick veil, it separated man, well, sinful men from God's holy presence. Access was limited because holiness mattered. But this also points toward Jesus Christ because when Jesus died, the veil in the temple was torn, symbolizing restored access to God through Jesus. And y'all know he rose again. I just can't leave that with he died. And moving on throughout these scriptures in the chapter, it says, according to the pattern, as the Lord commanded Moses and exactly as instructed. And those things, those three things kept repeating itself because God was teaching obedience after rebellion. Come on now, y'all. And in chapter 37, the sacred furniture is built. The Ark of the Covenant, it represented God's presence and covenant with his people. The mercy seat was where atonement was made, y'all, and where God would meet with Israel. The golden candlestick represented light, guidance, and continual presence. The altar of incense, that represented prayer and worship rising before God. The gold throughout the temple represented or symbolizes holiness, purity, and value. And another powerful detail comes with the laver being made from the women's looking glasses or mirrors. And spiritually, mirrors, they can symbolize self-focus and outward appearance. Their mirrors being surrendered for God's service can represent surrendered pride, vanity, and self-centeredness before the Lord. And the courtyard, it separated the holy place from the outside world, y'all, showing that boundaries, reverence, accountability, order, and stewardship mattered. Another important note is Becca. One Becca equaled half a shekel, according to Exodus chapter 38, verse 26. Every Israelite male 20 years and older gave one Becca during the census. This was connected to atonement and accountability before God. And one of the biggest lessons in this chapter is that people will sacrifice for what they value. And that's true because in Exodus 36, the people gave their gold for an idol. And in Exodus 35, they willingly gave for the work of God. Now, in relation to the Israelites, back in these chapters, we should ask ourselves, what are we giving our time, our attention, our money, our energy, and our devotion the most? Exodus 35:37 is not only about building a structure, it's about God teaching his people obedience, reverence, and willingness again after failure.